Right now, as you're watching this, a small capsule roughly the size of a minivan is hurtling through the vacuum of space at over 20,000 miles per hour. Inside are 4 human beings who have just traveled further from Earth than anyone in the history of our species. We aren't talking about a sci-fi movie, we're talking about the Artemis 2 mission. But here's the weird part. Despite the massive headlines, most people don't actually know what is happening up there. Is this just a multi-billion-dollar lap around a giant rock, or is it something much more calculated? By the end of this video, you're going to see why this 10-day mission was the most dangerous test drive ever attempted by NASA. We're going to open the door on the secret tech keeping the Artemis crew alive and explain the terrifying blackout zone that nearly ended the mission. If you think the moon is old news, wait until you see what we found on the far side. The giant leap no one saw coming for over 50 years, the moon has been a lonely place. Since the last Apollo mission in 1972, no human has left Earth's immediate orbit. We've been stuck in low Earth orbit, circling the planet like a car in a parking lot. But the Artemis 2 mission changed the game. This wasn't just a flight, it was a statement. NASA finally decided it was time to stop practicing and start performing. The mission's primary goal was simple yet incredibly complex. Take the Orion spacecraft, put people inside, and see if the life support systems actually work when you're 250,000 miles away from a repair shop. On Earth, if your act breaks, you call a technician. In deep space, if your oxygen scrubber fails, you have about 6 minutes to figure it out before things get terminal. This is why Artemis 2 is the most critical bridge between testing and colonizing. Breaking the Apollo 13 record now, this next part might surprise you. For decades, the crew of Apollo 13 held the record for the farthest humans have ever been from Earth. They reached that distance out of necessity. They were trying to swing back home after an explosion. But the Artemis 2 crew didn't just meet that record, they shattered it. By reaching a distance of over 252,000 miles, these 4 astronauts have officially entered the deep space category. When you're that far away, Earth looks like a tiny blue marble you can cover with your thumb. This distance isn't just a number for the record books, it's a psychological barrier. It proves that the Orion spacecraft can handle the intense radiation levels found outside Earth's protective magnetic field. The beast beneath the capsule, the SL's Rocket U, can't get to the moon on a budget firework. You need the SL's rocket, the Space Launch System. This thing is a monster. Standing at 322 feet tall, it produces 8.8 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. To put that in perspective, that's more power than 160,000 Corvette engines all screaming at once. But here's where things get interesting. The cells isn't just powerful, it's precise. During the Artemis 2 launch, the rocket had to place the Orion capsule into a very specific high Earth orbit first. Why? Because NASA wanted to test the ship's systems for 24 hours before committing to the trans-lunar injection. This is the space equivalent of checking your tire pressure before you drive across the Sahara Desert. If anything looked off in those first few orbits, the mission would have been aborted, and the crew would have come home immediately. Life inside the Orion minivan. Let's talk about what it's actually like for the Artemis crew. You've got 4 people: Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen, living in a space roughly the size of a professional SUV. And they're in there for 10 days. There's no downstairs. There's no outside. The Orion spacecraft is packed with 21st century tech that makes the Apollo capsules look like calculators from the 70s. We're talking about glass cockpits, touchscreens that work with gloves, and an advanced waste management system. Yes, the space toilet. That is a marvel of engineering in itself. But it's not all luxury. The crew has to exercise for hours every day to keep their bones from turning into jelly in zero gravity. They use a special vacuum-based weightlifting machine because, well, weights don't weigh anything in space. The mystery of the far side, and this is where most people make a mistake. They think the dark side of the moon is actually dark. In reality, it gets just as much sunlight as the side we see. We just call it the far side because it never faces Earth. During the lunar flyby, the Artemis II crew spent several hours in total radio silence as they passed behind the moon. Imagine the tension in mission control. For nearly an hour, there is zero communication. No heartbeat data, no voice, no video. The crew is entirely on their own, staring down at a cratered landscape that hasn't seen a human eye since the Nixon administration. This blackout zone is the ultimate test of the Orion's autonomous systems. If a computer crashed while they were behind the moon, the crew would have to use manual star charting to guide themselves back. The hidden danger, space radiation, one of the biggest hurdles for deep space exploration, isn't fuel or food, it's radiation. Once you leave the Van Allen belt's Earth's magnetic shield, you are being bombarded by solar particles and cosmic rays. These are tiny particles moving at nearly the speed of light that can rip through human DNA. To combat this, the Orion is shielded, but NASA also gave the crew radiation vests and instructed them to build a shelter out of cargo bags if a solar flare occurred. Imagine being 200,000 miles from home and having to hide behind your suitcases because the sun decided to sneeze. This is the reality of the Artemis II mission. It's a constant battle between human ambition and the harsh physics of the universe. The heat shield gamble, but here's where things got really tense during the mission planning. After the uncrewed Artemis I mission, engineers noticed that the heat shield on the Orion capsule didn't char the way they expected. Pieces of it actually flaked off. Now, if you're a robot, that's a data point. If you're a human being inside that capsule, that's a nightmare. For Artemis II, NASA spent months analyzing the skip entry maneuver. Instead of diving straight into the atmosphere like a bullet, the capsule skips off the top of the atmosphere, much like a stone skipping across a pond. This bleeds off speed and heat, which reaches 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit before the final descent. It's a high-stakes maneuver that required perfect execution from the onboard computers. If they skipped too high, they'd bounce back into space. If they dove too deep, they'd burn up. Proximity ops, practicing the handshake, one of the coolest parts of the Artemis II flight plan, was the proximity operations. After the Slell's rocket's upper stage pushed the Orion toward the moon, the crew didn't just drift away. They actually turned the capsule around and spent hours flying near the rocket stage. Why? Because in future missions like Artemis III, the Orion will have to dock with a SpaceX Starship in lunar orbit. You don't want the first time you try to dock in deep space to be the time you're low on oxygen. The Artemis crew used these prox ops to test the handling of the spacecraft, ensuring that the manual joysticks and thrusters were responsive enough for the delicate space handshake required for a moon landing. The splashdown, the most dangerous minutes of the mission, doesn't end when you see the moon, it ends when you hit the water. Re-entering the atmosphere is the most violent part of the journey. The Orion capsule hits the air so fast that the gas around it turns into plasma, a fourth state of matter. For the Artemis II crew, the final minutes involved a sequence of parachutes. First, the drogue chutes to stabilize the spin, and then the three massive main chutes that slow the 20,000-pound capsule down to a gentle 20 mph splashdown. But even then, the danger isn't over. They have to wait in the rolling waves of the Pacific Ocean until the Navy recovery teams can fish them out. This is the ultimate test of the crew's physical endurance after 10 days of muscle atrophy in microgravity. Why Artemis 2 is the final exam, a lot of people ask. Why didn't we just land on the moon during this mission? The answer is simple: safety and logistics. The lunar lander being built by SpaceX isn't ready for humans yet. But more importantly, NASA needed to treat Artemis 2 as the final exam. The story loop we started at the beginning, the question of whether modern humans could survive the blackout zone and the radiation of deep space, has been answered. We are ready. We are going back. If this breakdown helped you see why Artemis 2 is the most important mission of our lifetime, then you'll definitely want to watch our next video, where we reveal the secret plans for the first permanent moon base. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more space updates, and tell me in the comments, would you go to the moon if you had the chance? I'll see you in the next one.